social justice. So on the one hand, I think it's good that you let these really sensitive subjects about colonialism, which other authors would jump at the opportunity to turn into some kind of political message, you let that alone. But then the question comes up: where's the moral center, or do you feel like there's a need to have a moral center in a story like that?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I was being a little cheeky with it. I was aware that the reader would be looking for a moral center, and I was deliberately kind of obfuscating that a little bit to destabilize the reader and cause them to look elsewhere to
Okay.
a certain extent. Um, and I think it's because it boils down a little bit to me to my relationship to the audience. And I guess if you guys were reading the book, you're the audience. And there's different ways that a writer can orient themselves to the audience. One way that a writer orients themselves to the audience that I think is very, very common, and which is fine, honestly. I'm very for, an inclusive discourse, is the orientation where an author sort of believes they have some moral instruction for a reader. Like they need to tell the reader what to think or feel because the reader might not be thinking or feeling the right thing. Um, and honestly, when I read stuff like that, it feels a bit pedantic to me. I don't really quite like it when I feel a writer is trying to instruct me. I'm like, hey, buddy, I paid 15 bucks. Entertain me. That's what you're here for. I didn't come for your moral expertise. And so my relationship with the reader, I feel like a servant of the reader. And to me, my reader is somebody that I assume is just as empathetic and just as smart and just as socially aware as I am. So when I show the reader the 19th century, I don't think my reader really needs me to instruct them in it. I assume that like if we went around the room here and I went like, who's for colonialism? We'd all be like, no, we don't like colonialism, right? We, as sensitive, intelligent readers, we're all very well aware of the legacy of colonialism and the damage and the harm it's caused. But it is sort of an intractable fact of the past. So, in one sense, at a basic level, when I'm telling a story like this, I am just letting the past be the past. Like, what would Byrd have thought? What would Rand have thought? I'm going to put that on the page, and I don't think the reader needs my instruction on that. I assume the reader is a moral agent capable of navigating that on their own. And on the other hand, there is a little bit in the book of a response on my end to the sort of pedantic moral instruction or activist fiction that I see being very prevalent. So my little sort of provocation, I suppose, was in doing that and saying, look, I'm going to tell a story in this very fraught milieu, and I'm not going to say a damn thing about it. And let's see what the reader makes of that, you know?
Michael, one thing that I really, I think I've been puzzling about this for years, is this whole idea about colonialism where people, it's not just sort of about the big, powerful people making decisions.